Okay, just bear with us a moment, everybody. We're nearly there, just letting people join and then linking up with another presentation. We'll just be a minute or two while we let all the technology sync and catch up with us. Okay, nearly there. Numbers are just growing. We're only just on 1 o'clock. Okay, thanks, Sarah. Welcome everybody to today's ePrescribing Masterclass. It's great to have everybody join us today, whether you're joining through the Masterclass web link or whether you're joining us live streaming as part of the Learnathon, which is going on for the interoperable medicines work. We have a couple of presentations today. The first of which has been very slightly derailed this morning, and you may notice that we have Astrid Fairclough joining us from the Wessex One medication record instead of Nick Jones. Nick joked with me last week that his wife was pregnant and not due to give birth until the end of the month. Sadly, she didn't get the message, or the baby didn't, and it appeared at 6:10 this morning. So Astrid, at very late notice, has agreed to stand in and present. That's followed by colleagues from HEE who are going to be talking about some work that they've been doing to support the Interop Meds programme around education and learning for DM&D. As with all of these presentations, this will be recorded and made available after the actual event. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, please can you put them in the question box, and we'll pick them up at the end of each of the two presentations. Astrid, as she's joining us at late notice, will not be with us beyond 1:30. So if there are any questions that you do want to ask her, please make sure that you do ask them early on, and we'll pick them up at the end of this session. So without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Astrid, put you on the spot, Astrid, and let's hear about the Wessex One medication record.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you very much everybody for joining today. I'll do my very best. I mean, I think what we want to do is talk about the scope of the programme and the challenges that we face. So with our very best congratulations to Nick, I'll carry on to the next slide. Thank you. Our objectives: one medication record. It's part of the Wessex Care Record Shared Care initiative, which and it's one of the areas that we particularly wanted to sort of focus on to try and do some hopefully cutting edge, new developments that we think are going to help take ourselves as shared care records in the Wessex region, but hopefully some of our colleagues further into the sort of concept. We have some brilliant people in the area who, and I just want to mention at this point Andi Hadley, who led this project for many years. And the reason I mention it is because it's actually a 20-year-old idea. He's been talking about it for that long, and we think that we're now in the position that we've got all the right pieces to build it together to create our concept of one medication record. We think we've got the tech, the information, the people, the support, but still we're finding it a relatively challenging space. So I'm just going to run through sort of our objectives, where we're going, as I've already said. So what we want is a complete shared medication record. Oh, sorry, can I go back? I'm still... we want a complete record with allergy and intolerances so that all health professionals and prescribers can see it. It sounds so simple, and everybody on this call will know that it's not. For us to be able to do that, what's quite interesting is we need to have a bi-directional interface. So information flowing two ways from the GP record, the EPMA solution, and with the shared care record into the middle. Again, sounds simple, very much not simple. it means that we're dealing with lots of vendors. We'll talk about that in a bit. And we're really trying to cut down the amount of time it takes to transfer information, so it's easier, but also cut down the frequency with which things are typed in, retyped, transferred from A to B, because we're very aware, previously done some work to see the amount of risk of errors in those transform moments, and that's really a big ticket item of what we're trying to cut down. So it's going to be quicker, efficient, and obviously better transfer. So phase one, which we're going to talk about on the next slide, is about using that shared care record in the middle. And if I can go on to the next one, thank you. And our little purple box in the middle there is our shared care record. We use an Orion product, Orion Health is our supplier, and phase one, what we're trying to do is link up with our GP records so that we've got the structured content, which means that we can actually draw down, we can see the pieces of data that add up to us seeing that picture of what medication somebody is receiving. So structured information coming in from our GP record. We want that structured information to go back out again. And then down the bottom, we've got the same kind of an exchange in and out with our EPMA solution, which, well, Sky have obviously changed their names recently. I think a couple of days, a little bit difficult to keep all these slides up to date, but that's our EPMA solution. So again, we want that in and out. Now you can see then that we've got the shared care record in the middle as the sort of central repository for medications. I've mentioned structure already because that's quite a key building block, and that is so that we can see all the bits of what makes up a line of medication. And again, the audience will be more aware than I am of how important it is to have those nuts and bolts made up in the right way so that the information can be relied on. That's phase one. That would still be a really big breakthrough for us. Our next step, if I can go on to phase two, is that this is part of a much wider dream, and we've just added on a load of other bits that we can and should and will connect to. So we've got drug and alcohol information for us and in a separate system. So again, we need to be able to add that in. Oncology prescribing, you can see the pharmacy dispensing. There are all sorts of other places that we want to pull it in, but at the moment we are focusing, as I say, on GP systems and hospital EPMA solutions, all coming into a single place. If I can go into the next one. Initial milestones. What are we trying to actually do? At the moment, we're trying to make sure that all of that flow of information that I've just described is using standards-based interoperability. That means that when we do it, we're doing that in relation to a standard, a published standard specification, so that everybody else can do the same thing and use the same. I often think of it as a bit like a recipe card, and that means that then, whilst we may be doing it with Careflow, with Orion, it can be done in exactly the same place, same way, so that if we swap one of our bits out, if we swap to a different supplier, we're using, the ambition is to use the same standard to do it with whoever the new incumbent were to be. But probably more importantly, if we do something and then it can be shared with everybody else doing it in exactly the same way. So again, then we've got that ability to interoperate not only between our little Wessex world, but so that we can interoperate with our neighbours, and we can build a future. But doing so using the same standards base is what, for us, gives us such a long-term sort of opportunity around this. So we're working closely with vendors to make sure that this work is done in line with the standards. Now that means making sure standards is in place, and that's where we work with Anne's team at Wessex and with others in HS Digital, and again, that has also been part of a vendor-wide conversation about what that standard should be. So it's recently been published, very recently been published, which is really exciting because it means that now that we've got the standard, we can start to get cracking on it and get the messages in line with it. We obviously want to test real life system changes. So the next item 3 then is about local deployment, so that we then see those messages coming in and out of Dorset Care Record and CHI, our shared care record in Hampshire. And that will be the EPMA side of life. We want I've mentioned the structured content from the GP quite a bit already, and we're going to use something called GP Connect, which again is a standards-based approach, so that we have exactly the same messaging coming in and out. And then once we've got those building blocks in place, we can think about what our other integrations will be into the types of system. Okay, so next one. I can go to, thank you. Benefits. Why are we doing this? Because it's very techy, it's very collaborative, it takes quite a bit of time to get it all in place. We've done quite a good piece of, I think, benefits work to understand exactly what is driving this. It will, and captured it in this slide really, we want to reduce the effort for the patient to describe, to tell us what medications they've got. Again, you will all be very aware of having patients turn up with huge amounts of information, what's current, what's right, or no information, and how often do you have to ring through, try and work out exactly what's right and so on. When this works, that information will electronically transfer. So open up the record on your system of the shared care record and you've got it there. There's no need for handover manual description. Obviously, there will still be the conversations because you want to validate, because even if it's on a record, doesn't mean we all know doesn't necessarily mean it's being taken. So it's not the whole picture. The patient is still at the centre of this, but it should be reducing a lot of the risk and the time it takes to do that. Transcription errors, I think, are very well known as well. So again, if we've got automatic transfer, we haven't got transcription. Very big benefit, that one. Time, the dosage information, everybody can describe it in that electronic format. Interestingly, 3 times a day, once after meals 3 times, all of those kind of things. Using a consistent language and making sure that it's coded means that we wouldn't have that sort of mistake or potential for miscommunication there. So it also transcription errors in a slightly different way, in that it can be machine readable as well. And then finally, obviously, if we've got not only medication but also the allergy and intolerance data in a electronic purpose, we've got the opportunity for you've got more information available to us there. So again, using data standards, we can actually bring a bit more together in a good way. So we think that those 5 key benefits, with some others to follow, are the ones that we're going to be keeping an eye on through our first proof of concept and then further afield. If I go on to the next bit, I think the next couple of slides I talk a bit about governance and structure. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with this, but of course you'd expect it has governance and structure. We've got project board. Complex because we're looking across so many different groups, that what we've decided to focus on at the moment is a primary care and a secondary care subgroup, but with those coming together, and a really important line around clinical assurance, so that we're working with all the different clinical safety officers across the programme to make sure that this is right when it goes in and safe. The next slide then gives a feel for the number of stakeholders that we're working with, and it's a lot. We've got a number of providers. We've got, of course, our patients, our real people. We've got working with digital and X because of that desire for this to be sort of learned from, feeding into the standards work. And then just within our own Wessex patch, we've got, I think we've missed a, no, I think we've got 6. Yeah, we've got 6 acutes, we've got 3 community trusts, Our CCGs, I think we've got 10. We've got, of course, the primary care networks within those footprints as well. Not only the clinical safety officers of our shared care record, but also of the trusts involved with the EPMA rollouts as well. So it's a lot of people, but everybody has to be cited as we take our steps forward into this area. Can I go on to the next one? Challenges. We, as part of we're one of the programs called ELearning, which is was ELearning and now the Shared Care Record program as part of NHSX. So our ambitions relate back to I think 2019. We set ourselves up into the Wessex Care Record partnership, and at that point, it's good to get started, and no, it was 18, but about 12 months later, we were just getting moving in quite an exciting way, and unexpectedly, as everybody in the world has found, little global pandemic came along and really did knock things out, because this will only work if we've got collaboration with Frontline, so that we understand what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel. So that has, like so many projects, been a real challenge. At the same time, we also know that the benefits that we're talking about, saving time, reducing errors, are so important. So it's sort of one of those really tough projects that we wanted to drive forward, but we knew that it wasn't the right time. I think some of the impact of the COVID work, of course, has been the vendors that we're talking about are the vendors who are working with everybody. So we know that their to-do list also expanded greatly, and they've been so involved in some of those faster responses. But we still need to work out what we still need to engage well with our suppliers. You know, we're getting into a better place. We're getting, you know, as a whole, I think all of us are so more used to working in this with the increased pressures continuing. And so a lot of what we've done before in our shared care record area was working about a shared care record, about things it can already do, whereas we're trying to do development of things that a shared care records haven't got in their sort of standard toolkit at the moment. So that is turning out to be a slightly different relationship. We need to work in a way that means that we can develop, and when you develop, some things go wrong, and so we can't, whereas if we know that this is a possibility, we can contract, deliver, receive, pay, happy little cycle. But we need to make sure that we've got the right kind of iterative learning approach in place with our suppliers, and that is taking time. We're on a good journey, we've got those relationships in place, but it is something I think we really need to keep an eye on to make sure that we've still got that collaboration, true collaboration. I remember Ash, who was one of the architects who really helped with the standards work a couple of months ago, was describing that space for development to go well, but also space for development to find sticky bits and to find it difficult and to go wrong, because we learn as much from that as we do from when it goes well. That links very closely to the commercials, because that's a much harder place to deal with a commercial arrangement. We're also working with suppliers because, you know, we want to work with them around this space. At the same time, we want that to move into, we'd love it to move into part of the standard product, and then the commercials around how it turns into a product that's available for the whole sector is slightly different then. Standardization, you know, it's great. You know, we've got the need to consult and desire to consult with a wide range of stakeholders, but we also we want to move towards standardization. So how do we stick with standards whilst making sure that we get that sort of frontline engagement, because not everybody likes what the democracy ends up with. So it's, at the same time, we still are determined to stick with standards because of the reusability of it, the way that we are confident that this is what will last for years to come. So that one is a continual sort of push-pull, but I do think that we just need to work with standards as our top line, and then identify, are there aspects, are there areas where we can localize, we can get we can get the sort of that stakeholder view to change things. Ultimately, what we've got to make sure is that standards stay current and relevant, because a standard that is written in time and never changes becomes out of date very fast. So it's such a lot of work with. I know that there are a lot of people from Intropen on today, and this is why we're so sort of keen and supportive of the Intropen work, because it's that kind of collaborative space to see it going forward. Now this is where Nick, you will see a distinct. I think I've probably spoken quite differently from Nick up to this point, but even more so because it really gets into technical, detailed calls about what should be in the standard, what should be in the messaging, what's the minimum standard, what's right for there to be differences and options around, and the detail involved in the mappings and the specification is phenomenal. I have seen some incredible discussions with some very, very bright technical minds, and that is hard to bring it together, but it certainly is starting to pay off. Priorities, we've gone, I've already mentioned, we've gone sort of a GP and EPMA solutions at this first stage. They're some of the big meaty items, and we've gone with that as our priority items. Some of the smaller aspects might actually be quicker to develop. They might be perceived to be easier. But where do we fall on that sort of benefit side? So, that again wasn't the easiest thing to decide and then to stick to, because whenever you hit a block or whenever you think something's going a little bit slow, of course, there can easily be well, why don't we go on to this? And how do we manage that? How do we keep going? But I think we're on our journey at the moment, and I hope that we will keep ourselves onto it. We've got another page of challenges onto the next slide. Thank you. That scope, I think I'll probably just touch a little bit on that as well, actually, about we have phased, and that leads to a lot of conversations. When we're talking about those technical calls, you've got small and large. How many people do we bring into that? They have had to be relatively small groups because of the expertise and the sheer time it takes to work through it. But then we have to try and bubble out of that what the information that the wider group needs. And that has been a real sort of challenge. Nick and I was meant to mention Sarah, a couple of the people from our team who have done so much around that. But I do also know, want to thank X and D, because you also are supporting us in many meetings about that sort of bubble up, bubble down of information, the big picture, detailed picture, and it's hard to keep everything up to date. But I think we're getting there. We've benefited and found it a challenge around working with the national team. We're into the standards development. I've already talked about how important that is. At the same time, that then means it does go a bit slower. Of course it does, because we've got a much wider group. So it's that sort of, again, continual pull. You get benefit of working within that standard space. I think it will last so much longer as well. But at the same time, it can feel a little bit slow at times. In amongst all of what we're just talking about here, the EPMA solutions, the shared care record, have got their own development and upgrade cycles. They're long planned, and we've got to fit in with them or put forward a case as to why we should come first. So again, that's another space that we kind of go around in circles a little bit around. There's also a specific issue that a number of, I think pretty much all shared care records are facing, about how we as a shared care record are identified within the NHS digital architecture, infrastructure, and it's some coding, and that is meaning that a lot of us are facing a delay or not able to get on with GP Connect accreditation. The way that we want to work with the GP systems is a little bit held up in that space, which is, again, is quite a tricky problem because it's affecting so many people. So it doesn't seem to be going terribly fast, and it's also pretty entrenched because it's linked to ODS codes, organisational data service codes, and a lot of those sort of nuts and bolts of how the NHS is working. I think that's the end of my slides. Can I just check? Next one. Yes, Anne, can I think you're helping with this section.
Yeah, absolutely happy to. Thanks, Astrid. That was a really good run through, and yeah, again, thank you for standing in at short notice to help out. I guess what your presentation is telling us is that shared records, certainly single medication records, are really becoming a reality now, and I'm seeing it from a national perspective as well. You're one of 3 early adopter areas that we're working with, all of whom are getting very close. And your comment about, a question 20 years ago about, Andi's vision 20 years ago to do this, I share that, but mine's about 25 years ago, just a little bit older maybe, in a number of different areas. And reflecting back on that, one of the areas, not just a shared record, was actually EPMA to stock control as well, and we've seen our first instance of that going live this year. So this really is now a 20-year journey which is starting to bear some fruition, which is great to hear. Couple of questions that have come in, one of which I will answer, but the other 2 I think you probably can. You're not off the hook that easily, Astrid. So question, how is the work being funded?
We've got, it's a mixed bag, but we are largely using our Wessex care record, nationally provided shared care record funding for this. The shared care records that we've got in the patch are largely self-funded, certainly for sort of business as usual and running. But because this is a development, we're using part of our nationally bid for how fast can you go further and do some exciting stuff type funding. So it is still officially LAPRA funding. It has been up to this point, and then we'll be using our support from the Shared Care Record new NHSX programme for the next stages.
And I guess as part of that, one of the elements of that is that all the learning and all the stuff that you've gone through is absolutely shared, isn't it? For blueprinting. Yeah. And
you can hold us to the using the standards approach, definitely, because it's about going further and faster.
Yeah. And the final question, I'll answer the other one for you because I'm realising you need to disappear. So also to check whether mental health trust or trusts are involved, or is it primarily about the acute trusts?
They are involved, yes, they are. We've got Dorset a little bit, it's the phasing of getting everybody sort of absolutely on at the same time. But so the Dorset Community and Mental Health Trust is going through an EPMA rollout at the moment. So again, a sort of day-to-day in the next 6 months have got quite a bit on themselves. But yes, we want to make sure that the work that we're doing is building towards them. I think they will. I think that's likely to be coming to the phase 2, but they're already board members, they're already consulted, they're making sure that the vision is right for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. This won't work if any care sector's missed out, will it, in the long run? It has to be a single consolidated record, and consolidation means everywhere and everybody, including the patient, most importantly, including the patient at some point. And then the final question which has come in, which I can answer for you if you're happy with that, is, are the standards published? Well, absolutely. UK Core was published in version 1 last Friday, so very hot off the press. The actual fire core stuff is published through HL7, and the implementation guidance, which will be iterative, as Astrid rightly says, this is not a static place, and nor can it ever be. But the implementation guidance that sits around it is published through NHS Digital, and is available and will continue to be updated. And off the back of that, which will launch on the 1st of October, what we also have approval for, which we hope will help everybody is an information standard notice, which will mandate this as the standard across the NHS to move medicines information around and across and between sectors. And obviously that helps, we hope, everybody, because there is a static standard for a period of time to allow everybody to actually get on the journey that Astrid and team are clearly a little bit ahead of many others. So thank you, Astrid.
I'm actually hoping, just sorry, on that ISB element, I'm hoping that shared care records as a whole can actually learn from what that experience is, because we're not using information standards terribly much in other areas. So, you know, even within our shared care space, I think I'm looking forward to that one. Thank you very much, Anne, for answering that last one for me.
Not a problem. And enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks, Astrid, for standing in at short notice. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
So moving on. We realised as a programme nationally that if we're going to support people to use information standards, whether it's DM&D, whether it's the fire standards, from work that Sarah Carhill has done with two of her fellow colleagues, we needed to support everybody in really understanding all the standards, etc., etc. So Sarah, working with the team and with Health Education England, has put together quite a comprehensive learning package, and Andi and colleague are here to talk to you. So Andi and Alison, sorry, are here to talk to you about how that work has all coalesced, come together, and is now available for people to use. So Andi, can I hand over to you? You're on mute, Andi. Still can't hear you.
Thank you. It's Alison here. I'll step in, so I'll kickstart us if that's okay.
That's right.
Nice to meet you all, and thank you so much for inviting us along, giving us the opportunity to be able to present at your masterclass today. My name's Alison Potter, and as already introduced, I work with Health Education England. I form part of the Technology Enhanced Learning team there. I'm a Learning Technologies Advisor, and my colleague Andi Blackmore also works with Health Education England as a Programme Manager for the eLearning for Healthcare platform. So our understanding of you as an audience is mainly that you're coming from sort of a pharmacist, that you're mainly pharmacists and prescribers and pharmacy technicians, and some digital colleagues with you as well amongst you. So just really a caveat to our presentation is we don't have that clinical background, we're not pharmacists ourselves, but what we will be able to share with you today is information about what resources are available online to support pharmacy and prescribing, and that will include the DM&D package as well. So if I could get you to move to slide 3 for me, please.
Alison, hopefully people can hear me now.
Thank you, Andi. Say hi.
Can people hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, apologies. Yes, my mic decided to switch. Thank you, Alison. Yes, and just to if I'll pick it up now. Just really, I was just going to reiterate that yes, we're not clinicians, but as Alison said, we work as part of TEL and Health Education England. So as outlined on the slide in front of us, the TEL team enable and support healthcare workforce to have access to learning technologies and learning opportunities. And this is sort of through a real combination of e-learning, blended learning, and also sort of starting to move into the area of simulation as well. So Alison and I both sit within this team doing sort of different roles. If you can move to the next slide, please. So first of all, just a bit of background around e-learning for healthcare. Some of you may be familiar with e-learning for healthcare. It's a programme and a platform that provides a huge amount of resources for all the health and education, so health and care workforce. So we currently have, I think, getting close to 450 different programmes on the platform. It started way back in 2007, and we had fairly big programs that we built at that stage, a radiology program, an EGP and an anaesthesia program. But over time, we've started to develop hundreds and hundreds of programs, and very notably, during the March 2020, the date all of us will remember, we had to very quickly pull together a coronavirus program that actually got sent right across the world. We normally charge overseas, but we gave it free right across the world. And we also have delivered all the vaccination e-learning. So we were sort of waiting within the team for things to be announced, and we released all that training around vaccination. We work really in partnership with loads of organisations across the NHS, so third sector, universities, royal colleges, to develop really quality assured e-learning. And as it says on here, we had 4.8 million session launches in January of this year, which is our biggest one ever since 2007. And I think we had pretty much over 22 million session launches in 2020 as a result of obviously the big rollout of the coronavirus program, and also other programs being accessed quite a bit. And all of this is free of charge to all those working in health and care across the NHS. So next slide, please. So as Anne mentioned, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Dictionary of Medicines and Devices, DM+D, but also we were asked to look at also other resources and other programmes that we have developed in recent years, and actually the ones I'm going to sort of look at are ones that were launched in 2021. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the DM&D programme, as Anne said, we worked very closely with the team, AHSN, and it was decided that there were sort of three key areas that we needed to focus on. One is about looking at what is DM&D, and that introduces it as a standard in sort of non-technical terms and outlines what's provided, its purpose and benefits for patient safety, and it's for clinical and non-clinical staff. We also then had another session which looks at why should people adopt the DM&D standard, and I think this and the how to adopt are sort of quite key focuses of the learning, and this was around outlining the benefits of implementing it and explaining who needs to be involved. And the second session here was it sort of more for clinical staff, and the how to adopt provided sort of relevant information and a sort of NHS blueprint and requirements on how to embed the system, and it gave that sort of further understanding around sort of how to be compliant with those standards. Next slide, please. So this is just a few screen grabs, just to give you a sense of the sorts of things we covered in the session. You obviously can go off and explore and have a look at those by registering on elfh.org.uk. But here we have we've used a combination of sort of quite a few explainer videos that really take you through the process of how to implement things and how to use it. You'll see here the example is about how SNOMED CT works with DMD. And we also, you'll see we've got sort of at the bottom left here, we've also got sort of how it's used in different settings. So this is like what we call a hotspot graphic. So you can click on this and find out more information. And within eLearning for Healthcare, we've actually built over the last year or so, we've built a really great graphics and animation team. So we're still creating a lot more sort of graphics, and you'll see there's a graphic here on the bottom right, really. So as I'm going to talk about other resources as well, I'd suggest you go and explore and have a look at this programme. So go to the next slide, please, and I'll just talk about some other resources that we've also launched this year. So we have this programme. We actually delivered this in a really short space of time because there was a quite urgent need by the interim foundation pharmacist programme within HEE to deliver a session that really focused on allowing sort of trainees and early career pharmacists to understand the principles of the integrated care system and how that works across how that's going to help sort of ensuring better health and care for everyone. And as you can see, the learning outcomes here really focus on sort of describing what ICS is, how it's going to be used in different organisations, and also the role of the pharmacy teams as part of this wider system. So if you can go to next slide, please. So again, I've just put a few screen grabs in here, and you can see that, you know, all our e-learning is quite bright and visual and hopefully engaging. And what we've done in this session, and we employ quite a bit across the different sessions that we put together, is we really want to make sure that the content we put up here really speaks to people and has real life scenarios. So as you'll see here on the left is our menu. This first of all allows people to sort of drop into each of the areas that they wish to, and along the bottom there's access to 3 different case studies, and in these case studies we meet Mrs. Asong, Mr. Shah, and a character called Alex. And what it does is it allows, you can see on the right here, we've got Mr. Shah's, so a couple screen grabs from the case study for Mr. Shah, and this allows the user to sort of follow the story of a patient. And the example I've put here is, you may not be able to read the text because it's obviously smallish, but it's talking about placing you in that position, saying you're working in a cardiovascular ward and you need to prepare a discharge form for Mr. Shah, who has AF and diabetes, and you need to consider how to support the safe discharge for him. And actually what it does is it allows you to go through, put in some considerations, think about how you're going to address a certain issue, and it provides you feedback as you go there. And you'll see here there's also a screen that talks about some of the red flags. And actually, you know, these case studies or scenarios allow you to sort of think about how you would deal with that particular situation. So putting that integrated care system in real terms, I suppose. And again, if you want to go and look at this, then it's live and you can go on to ELFH and register and access this. If you go on to the next slide, please. So these are just 3 other programs that I'll talk briefly about that we've also launched this year. One was, I think, last year, end of last year. So the first program here was the Pharmacy Education Supervisor Training. And this is an external program hosted on the Hub, and it was developed by the School of Pharmacy at the University of East Anglia, which is literally a mile from where I live. And that was done with sort of the De Montfort University and Keele University, and funded by HEE. And it consists of 2 sessions around core skills and enhanced skills. And there's a further advanced skills, that is going to be due later this year, I believe. And that session, that's content that we haven't developed, but this is an example of us sort of hosting content that's been created by a third party. The pharmacy in primary care that you can see on the right was developed to meet the need of when face-to-face training couldn't happen for those early pre-reg pharmacists. They couldn't go into a community pharmacy to undertake the training. So what we did was we looked at how we could create the next best thing using a character called Sasha, who takes you through 4 different sessions that are within that programme. So one is about essential services, one's about advanced and enhanced services, one is around unscheduled care, and there's also a session around clinical pharmacists in general practice. So again, you know, if you think that's an area that you're interested in looking at, then please do go and have a look. This has been live. The first session I think went live at the end of last year, and we've had really positive feedback on this so far, which is great. And finally, the third session, the third programme, sorry, the antimicrobial stewardship out of hours programme. This is quite interesting. It's sort of evidence-based in that there was a big research project that was undertaken by the University of Bristol and the University of Southampton, and there was a project called Open Project, where they actually did a load of assessment and did some recordings of how real out of hours prescribers have been engaging with patients and some of the common things that were happening. So the 4 sessions themselves are aimed at nurses, paramedics, GPs, as well as pharmacists, and they help to communicate with patients presenting with common infections. So this is quite interesting because all the content was from evidence that they had gathered during that research project. So go on to the next slide, please. So those, it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of the sessions, some of the programmes, as well as the DM&D programme that we've developed. And this is just a list of some other programmes that are available that you might want to go and look at if you're not aware of them. So Prescribe being probably one of the bigger ones. And there are many more programmes that are being discussed potentially to come through in the next year or so. And as I said, please go and have a look on our website and register on the portal. So that's it for me on e-learning for healthcare. So now Alison is going to speak to you about Script, which is one of our other sort of major prescribing programmes. Thank you.
Thank you, Andi. Can you hear me okay? I'm hoping that's a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the Script e-learning programme. So there's obviously a whole variety of different resources that are already out there available to you. The Script e-learning programme is yet another to add to the catalogue of resources that we provide to prescribers. So this is essentially a really large web-based e-learning programme comprising about 220 modules now, mainly to support your learning in prescribing and therapeutics and to encourage sort of safe and effective practice around that. Next slide, please. So this, again, similar to e-learning for healthcare, is freely available across the NHS. So if you have an nhs.uk or nhs.net email address, you can gain free access to this resource online. That's that website address displaying on the screen. This programme is commissioned by Health Education England in partnership with University of Birmingham and a technical partner called OCB Media. So this we make freely available as widely as possible, and over the last 18 months, the pandemic has accelerated that sort of widened out free access to everyone. You'll see there, hopefully it's not too small for you on the screen, but there's now 8 different sort of portfolios within the programme, so medicine and surgery, paediatric, nursing, etc. So these sort of focus on those specific sort of targeted areas and targeted groups. We're looking at widening access even further now, and we have actually just managed to secure free access for all undergraduate students in medical, nursing, dental and pharmacy schools. So we're hoping to see a real increased use by undergraduates with script to support their therapeutics teaching. So probably what I believe may actually be the most appropriate portfolio to direct you towards on script will be the pharmacy portfolio. Whilst it doesn't have specific modules relating to digital pharmacy, we're imagining that actually most of you, pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, will still have some sort of clinical element to your job. So the pharmacy portfolio may comprise of modules that would be most relevant to your practice. Next slide, please. So again, similar to e-learning for healthcare and all the e-learning that we provide from and commission from Health Education England, all of it is expertly authored. It's authored and it's approved by healthcare professionals. We try to make it as interactive as possible. We ensure that it's accessible 24/7 when you need it, and that certificates and things are available. Now, the one thing with the script program, which is consistent throughout all of the modules, is that you do have there's pre-tests and post-tests. Now, the pre-tests sort of helping you to identify your own sort of learning needs, and also the post-test hopefully helping you to see what change there has been in sort of knowledge acquisition. So next slide, I think, so it brings up two borders. There's two areas on this slide just to focus on, and with the commission with University of Birmingham, what that means is that all of these modules on the script e-learning programme are constantly updated. So they're reviewed regularly to ensure that they're in line with guidance and with any patient safety alerts, as you'd expect really, but obviously it's an area where there's changes and updates quite frequently, so these modules are really responsive to that. Another area that is supported by the university is actually the technical and editorial support as well for both users and educators. So if you've got a question or further clarification needed around the content, then they're able to answer that. So on the next slide, please, you'll see a list of some of the e-learning content that's available within this pharmacy portfolio on script. So just to sort of give you a flavour of the titles there, I'll just pause a moment for you to just have a little read through what those are. Now the first three bullets are sort of the more sort of generic principles, which if you're a pharmacy technician, and we appreciate that if you're a pharmacy technician, you're not going to be a prescriber, but you may find that these principles will be, might be helpful to you in terms of understanding basic principles. The following sort of block of bullet points where they've got a little asterisk next to them, that actually means that you can get these modules with a primary care focus, or you can choose one that has a secondary care focus. So depending on your context and your role, you can choose modules that fit for you and are most relevant for you. So obviously being a pharmacist doesn't necessarily mean that you are a prescriber, but many pharmacists are now independent prescribers, and we know that from 2027 all newly qualifying pharmacists will be independent prescribers. So hopefully you'll find something of value within this programme. And that is actually it from the point of view of script. So I'm going to hand you back to Andi, who will wrap up with just some general information about some of our other platforms we have, and then we'll be happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Yes, so script, as Alison said, is one of the platforms that we have, and another platform, and eLearning for Healthcare, the one in the centre there, is the one that I've been talking about, where we host the majority of our SCORM e-learning content at the moment, and that's a platform that has grown over the years. The other, I can just do next slide, it should highlight an area. Thank you. So the Learning Hub is a new platform that you may or may not have heard of, but we have been building this for 18 months, 2 years, I think. And this at the moment is offering us a huge opportunity for people to contribute their own content. So it has a series of catalogues on it. So organisations can set up a catalogue. They can upload resources, PDF documents, links out to articles or videos. And so these catalogues are great because they allow for that sort of contribution from the wider group. The Learning Hub is growing and changing, and new features are being added all the time. So please go and have a look, and you can also sort of find out more about new features that are being added. The other platform there is Digital Learning Solutions. This is a platform that the TEL team purchased. Sorry if you hear background noise, someone going out my door. The TEL team purchased or brought into the sort of TEL team, I should say, in April 2020. And that platform delivers a lot of digital literacy sort of training and supports over 300 healthcare organisations. Yes, that's the main sort of three platforms. If you can go to next slide, please. So as I said, please go and have a look at the eLearning for Healthcare websites, as we mentioned, and also you can follow us on Twitter, and you can also sign up to a monthly newsletter, TEL News. The TEL News is, if you see the email address there, TEL News is great because you can get to hear about new programs that we're launching and new sort of things that are being added to the Learning Hub. So anything that you might want to know about the TEL sort of team at large will be within that TEL News, and I say it's monthly. So I think that is everything from us, and if you have any further questions.
So thanks, that was really great, and great to hear about some of the other products that are available for people to use as well. A couple of questions from people who've dialed in from Northern Ireland and from Scotland. Are these packages available for devolved nation NHS?
Yes, yeah, we do have access. You can access from Scotland, Northern Ireland. Although we're Health Education England, we do get quite a wide sort of user base from those areas as well.
Okay, now that's really helpful. One which is slightly different. Somebody who's trying to figure out and edit and manage own local e-learning resources at a hospital. You've obviously got lots and lots of expertise of this. Do you recommend a particular department who should pick up the work, do you think, given the skills that you're employing? And where would you suggest they might get training for systems like Articulate, which I believe is one of the platforms that could be used to support e-learning?
That's a difficult one, because obviously eLearning for Healthcare, we have our own team and we design and develop e-learning ourselves. We can host external content that's being developed, but as far as I know, unless Alison knows anything else, we don't provide any sort of training for regions to create their own. If they create their own and it passes our testing, they can go onto the hub, or potentially go onto the Learning Hub. Sorry, Alison, you were going to say something.
Yeah, if I add to that, I think with regard to that, if you're exploring creating local content, I think probably connecting in with your local learning and development department, and seeing what they already do and offer, and connecting in with those. Invariably, hopefully, your learning and development department will have a designated person that attends one of our TEL networks. So depending on what region you're in, well, in fact, all regions are covered by a technology enhanced learning network now, and any trust can join that. Usually it's a member of the learning and development team that attend, but I think just connect in with those. If you're unsure who that might be or how to get in into that network, then you can do email us at tel@he.nhs.uk, and we can put you in touch with a work stream that we have, which is called Supporting TEL, and that's very much about how we increase capability out across the service to utilise learning technologies, and that may include authoring your own and support for how to learn how to use Articulate and things.
Okay, that's really great. We've hit the magic hour of 2 o'clock where people need to disappear off and join other calls and meetings. I just wanted to answer one question that somebody put through around SNOMED, and the answer is there's a lot available on the web around SNOMED. Best place to go and look is IHTSDO, and you'll find learning resources there, as well as BSA and also NHS Digital. Otherwise, I'd like to say a huge thanks to Andi, to Alison, to Astrid, with the 3 A's today, actually 4 A's even. And, you know, great to see all of this work that's been going on. Super to see all these resources coming together. And thank you so much for sharing all of the work with us, so that people can benefit from it. We will be back next month with the next masterclass. If anybody would like to volunteer to do any work, as in present some of the really interesting and exciting stuff that they're doing at a local level, please do get in touch with us. If you have colleagues who would like to join, then please email Sarah. She'll be really happy to add you into the network. Otherwise, we're going to ask you about some work that we're doing around the DM&D browser and what you'd like to see for that coming in the future. So we'll share that with the information that comes out post this call, with the links to the slides and so on. So huge thank you again to everybody, to Sarah for quietly sitting in the background and making all of this work, and for our presenters today. Have a good rest of the day, everybody, and for those on the Learnathon, enjoy the next sessions which will be following. Bye for today.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.